Vishnupada Paramahamsa Purivraj Acharya Ashtoter Srimad His Divine Grace Srimati Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Nama Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Prema Sikho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki, Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Ganga Maya Ki, Jamuna Maya Ki, Bhakti Devi Tasi Maharani Ki, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki, Gandhara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Giriraj Govardhan Ki, Nita Gaur Premanande, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Guru, all glories to Shri Prabhupada, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnanatamurandhyasya Jnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dajati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagaritam Sagara Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagara Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Cha He Krishna Guru Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vishwamana Shri Devi Pramani Adi Priye Namaste Girirajaya Shri Gauranga Namane Sheshakleshana Shaya Parmanandanaine Vacha Kalpatarabhischa Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasali Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namaskritta Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayan Nastapreshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Hare Krishna everybody. So Krishna's arrangement that I realized that Dero is also going to be gone, so that Wednesday there's Mino class, Thursday Mino class, and Friday Mino class. So I decided I'll give class Friday, Wednesday, we'll do a video tomorrow, and then Gauranga will give class on Friday. And yes, and we'll only do one video on Saturday, of course, it's Kirtan, and then the lead will be on Sunday. So it worked out. So today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, chapter number 22, text 41. I'd like to welcome Krishna Kumari. I've been a little bit sick. I've been taking vitamin C's. I was remembering how Krishna Kumari, she brought me vitamin C while I was in Mayapur. And I was really down. And the vitamin C's in Mayapur were keeping me up. So I was thinking about that this morning. When I first came here, this temple, I just first started coming to this temple, and then you were just leaving, and I just met you very briefly. And then of course we met in Mayapur. So. 21, yeah. Maitreya Uvacha Saevam Brahmaputrena Kumarena Brahmenasa Darshit Atmagati Samyak Prashasyo Vachatam Nripa Maitreya Uvacha Saevam Brahmaputrena Kumarena Brahmenasa Darshitatmagati Samyak Prashasyo Vachatam Nripa Maitreya Uvacha Saevam Brahmaputrena Kumarena Brahmenasa Darshitatmagati Samyak Prashasyo Vachatam Nripa Saevam Brahmaputrena Kumarena Brahmenasa Darshitatmagati Samyak Prashasyo Vachatam Nripa Maitreya Uvacha Saevam Brahmaputrena Kumarena Brahmenasa Darshitatmagati Samyak Prashasyo Vachatam Nripa Maitreya Uvacha Saevam Brahmaputrena Kumarena Brahmenasa Darshitatmagati Samyak Prashasyo Vachatam Nripa. Word 4. Maitreya Uvacha. Great sage Maitreya said. Saha, the king. Evam, Thus, Brahmaputrena, by the son of Lord Brahma, Kumarena, by one of the Kumaras, Atma-vedasa, well versed in spiritual knowledge, Darshita, being shown, Atmagati, spiritual advancement, Samyak, completely, Prashasya, worshipping, Vaja, said, Tam, unto him, Nirpa, the king. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Maitreya continued, being thus enlightened in complete spiritual knowledge by the son of Brahma, one of the Kumars, who was complete in spiritual knowledge, the king worshipped them in the following words. Please repeat. The great sage Maitreya continued. Being thus enlightened in complete spiritual knowledge by the son of Brahma, one of the Kumaras, who was complete in spiritual knowledge, the king worshipped them in the following words. Purport by Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In this verse, the word Atma-vedasa is commented upon by Sripad Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who says that Atmani means unto Lord Krishna, Paramatmani. Lord Krishna is the Paramatma, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Therefore, one whose mind is acting fully in Krishna consciousness is called Atma-vedaha. This may be contrasted by the word Grihamedi, which refers to one whose brain is always engrossed in thoughts of material activities. The Atma-vedaha is always thinking of Krishna's activities in Krishna consciousness. Since Sanat Kumar, who was the son of Lord Brahma, was fully Krishna conscious, he could point out the path of spiritual advancement. The word Atma-gita refers to the path of activities by which one can make progress in understanding Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinandu Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauranga Kachari Vishesha Shivani Pasachari Shtari Namaste Jivani Dasa Ramachari Bhavaya Sasasura Agyana Dvanta Radha Pashtaka Nitana Agyana Gurudaya Chitari Echa. So we have a nice purport here. Prabhupada is comparing the Atma-vedaha and the Grihamedi. So you can get the contrast there, that a Krishna conscious person is fully absorbed in Krishna. And a materialistic person is fully absorbed in Maya, fully absorbed in the elusive material potency. So this is our absolute goal in spiritual life, is to become fully absorbed in Krishna. So absorption usually happens when we become in love with something, or we begin to obsess over something. People become very absorbed in their video games, become very absorbed in their television shows and the sports they watch. They become absorbed in their families, they become absorbed in the activities based around material energy. And in that way they suffer. Krishna says, Yehi samsparsha javoga dukkha yonya evate ayatavanta karmanateshu ramate buddha. That a wise person doesn't delight in the activities of the senses, because such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So they become absorbed in this type of material pleasure. And in that absorption, we begin to lose who we are. We become covered over by Maya, because we begin to act under false ego and think we're the doer. Prakriti kriyamanani punakarmani sarvasha. Ahankara mudama. Ahankara, we become covered by this false ego, thinking I'm the material body and this is mine. And therefore all of our activities are based on bodily advancement. In contrast to that, the spiritual personality of the person in Krishna consciousness, he's fully absorbed in the activities of Krishna. He's acting in such a way that he's always thinking of Krishna. Prabhupada says in various purports that one should arrange their lives in such a way that they can't but think of Krishna 24 hours a day. So this is going to be a challenge for those who work in the world. People are challenged, I have a job, I'm always absorbed, I have a family, how do I think of Krishna? Well, Krishna explains that we should continue to do our duty while at the same time thinking of Krishna. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yijatmayapritavanabuhir. Just perform your prescribed duty of fighting while at the same time remember being the form of Krishna. With your mind and intelligence fixed on me, surely you will take me without fail. So we have to fix our mind and intelligence on Krishna, and this is why we practice sadhana bhakti. Because we're not on the level of pure devotion, we don't have spontaneous attraction for Krishna yet, or we may not. We may, but most of us probably don't. But if we do have spontaneous attraction for Krishna, then that's easy. We just always think of Krishna by spontaneous love. But if in the case that we don't, we begin to practice sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti is a process by which we can fix our minds on the Lord via the process of chanting Hare Krishna, worshiping the deity, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in that way, we become immune. Prabhupada actually uses that word, it's a vaccine. Vaccinated by the holy name, as our Guru Guru say so much. I'm vaccinated by the holy name. So Prabhupada use that analogy that we take the vaccine, you become immune. So the vaccine to Maya is to chant Hare Krishna. We become immune to going out into the material energy by chanting Hare Krishna. And then we can always think of Krishna in that way, which is the actual process of bhakti, is just to think of Krishna, to absorb our minds in Krishna. And so there's examples of that throughout the Bhagavatam, throughout the scriptures of absorption. One that comes to mind right now is the 24 gurus discussed in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. One great sage is explaining how he has 24 gurus, and one of those gurus is the arrow maker. One of the 24 gurus is the arrow maker. And the arrow maker, he learned from the arrow maker absorption. The arrow maker, he's making his arrow. He's so absorbed in making the arrow that the king passes by with a procession, with a great elephant procession, his entourage. And they said to him, "Did you see the king?" And he said, "No, there was the king." He didn't even notice because he was so absorbed in making his arrow. So in that way we can understand that if we become absorbed in the activities of serving Krishna, then we don't have time to be distracted by Maya. But to the degree that we're not absorbed in serving Krishna, we'll be absorbed in serving Maya. So when we're practicing Krishna consciousness, we have to be very active and enthusiastic in thinking, how am I going to absorb myself? It's Krishna's mercy that we can absorb ourselves. I was with, Chaitanya Charan once, and Chaitanya Charan was an extremely absorbed devotee. I was driving him from Phoenix to Tucson, and he's like a supercomputer. He's so intelligent, and he was immediately talking, asking questions about how he's going to serve Tucson community. And immediately he takes out his laptop and starts writing an article on Krishna. And then he stops and he starts reading. He rests well and takes his laptop out. Immediately, just full absorption in service. So in this way we can also learn to absorb ourselves, that we have to think of ways to serve. This is actually the process of being absorbed. You have to think of ways to serve. You can always find a million reasons not to serve. It's very easy to find a reason not to do something. I'm going to do that today, but we can always find something to do. Create service. And Mother Saldamani, when she needs something done at yard day, she'll find service. So no matter how clean everything looks, she'll find something to be cleaned. Because there's always things to be done in Krishna consciousness. Actually, I was once with Ashram Maharaj, and I don't know how we got on the topic of boredom. He's like, I am never bored. Never, not in one instance am I ever bored. There's so much service to be done that I will never, until the rest of my life, I'll never have a day where there's not something done. And if by any chance there's something that doesn't need to be done, I have my leave back. So, yeah, there's always service to be done. And even if we're doing service, we're not always absorbed. We can be absorbed in Maya while externally doing some type of Krishna conscious service. So this absorption requires, first and foremost, requires Krishna's mercy to become absorbed in service. But Krishna also has to see our effort. He has to see our effort. I was reading that Radhanath Maharaj's Journey Home, which I never read, but I know we were going to see him in a few days in that side of Sanka, so I thought I'd read it. And I just completed it actually. But one of the devotees of Vrindavan, the great devotee Babas that he's speaking to in Vrindavan, he was living on a very obscure little hill and as a recluse. And he never talked to anyone, he just been sitting chanting Krishna. And so Radhanath Maharaj was told by Krishnadas Babaji, Srila Prabhupada's dear godbrother, to go meet him. And he was up there, and the villagers below said, oh, there's a very dangerous leopard that has been spotted and killed 2 people in the village, and it's going up the hill now. And so then, Maharaj had, not Radhanath Maharaj, but the Baba had a stick. And Radhanath Swami was asking him, he says, I don't know if that stick's going to do anything, maybe we should do this. And he says, no, the stick, he says, Maharaj asked him, he said, do you think the stick will do anything? No, Krishna will do everything. But the stick is at least showing Krishna that we did our part. So we have to do our part. We can't avoid doing our part and expect Krishna to do it. If we do our part with enthusiasm, then Krishna does all the rest. Krishna explains in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, those who are devoted to serving me, then I carry I preserve what they have and carry what they lack. So, first and foremost, Krishna, and then everything else comes. And that's the nature of surrender, that when we're surrendered to Krishna, everything becomes magical, because we enter that divine potency. We enter into the Didi Shakti. We become, Krishna says, Mahavilas Timam Parthagaihi Prakriti Ashita Vajanyana Dimasa Vyakaram Pitamavina. The Mahavas, they're under the shelter of the divine nature. They're under Radharani's shelter because they understand Krishna's position. And therefore it's very easy for them to serve Krishna. Yatam Dashruja Vrata, with great determination they serve Krishna. Because they understand Krishna's position. And they also understand their position. And when that's very clear, when that Sambandha Gyan is clear, it becomes self-evident to serve Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita, Chatra Sloki is considered the 4 most important verses in the Bhagavad Gita, or the essential verses of 10.8, 10.9, 10.10, and 10.11 of the Bhagavad Gita. In the very first verse, first off, the reason why they're considered the Chatra Sloki is because they have all aspects of knowledge. The Vedas describe that there's three levels of knowledge. The first is Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan means knowledge of our relationship with God. So before we can act in Krishna consciousness, we have to understand what is our relationship with God. And then Abhideya means how do we act in that relationship? What is the process of acting in that relationship? And then Prayojana, what is the goal? what is the goal of that relationship? So the Sambandha Gyan verse, Aham Sarvasya Pavavo Mata Sarva Vartate Iti Matva Bhajante Mam Buddha Bhavasamam Bhavataha. I am the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service with determination, with all their hearts. So when you understand, it becomes clear by study and clear by revelation that Krishna is the source of everything. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karna Karnam. He's Sarva Karna Karnam. He's the source of everything, the cause of all causes. He's the supreme Paramatma. He's the supreme Ishvara, Ishvara Parama. When that becomes clear to an individual by associating with devotees and hearing the scriptures, then all the material and all that is spiritual is emanating from Krishna. It becomes very easy to engage in devotional service with our whole heart. And then he says, that the verse, that's Abhideya, that's our relationship with God. God is the source of everything, and when we understand that, we can engage in His service. And when that becomes clear to us, the next verse given in relation to Abhideya is Tesham Satatam Yuktanam Bhajatam Pritipurtakam Vidali Buddhi Yogam Tam Nidamamupayatite. To those constantly devoted to serving you with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So by that constant engagement in devotional service, by that absorption, by becoming absorbed in Krishna, one develops the intelligence. By Krishna's grace, He gives us the intelligence on how to come to Him. Actually, there's another verse which I always forget the Sanskrit. Mach Chitta Magati Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Kadayantashamam Nityam Tushyanti Charamati Cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me, their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So this is the process of acting in our relationship with Krishna. Our thoughts are dwelling in Krishna, our lives are devoted to His service, and we derive great satisfaction and bliss from enlightening one another and conversing about Him. And then the last verse, the goal, what is the goal? Krishna says, I dwelling within their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So by that service, Krishna destroys the ignorance that's covering us. And then it becomes clear. Our relationship with Krishna is lit up like the sun. It becomes clear. So we have to have the mercy of Krishna to be absorbed in His service. And how do we practically become absorbed in service? Some people come to us many times while we're preaching and they say, why do I need a guru? God is in my heart. I just hear God directly. I do not need to surrender to anybody. Once I was asked by a sincere person, it was Indian. My Indians, when they have a question, they say, Prabhuji, I have a doubt. He said, Prabhuji, I have a doubt. I said, what's that? And he said, how can I take shelter of a guru knowing that they don't know as much as Srila Prabhupada? And that's a very, very good question. And I told him that Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master was a Shrutidhar who remembered everything he ever saw and was the most erudite Vedic scholar imaginable in the modern times. Yet his guru couldn't even read, was illiterate. So how are we to understand? The guru is giving us spiritual knowledge, but if that knowledge is just what we hear in class and not applied with service, then the actual vigyan, the actual realization doesn't develop. So Krishna says, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshati te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. There's Tadvidi, every time you hear that word Tad, it means in relation to the Supreme. So Tadvidi, Vidi means to inquire, Tadvidi, please inquire about the Supreme, Tadvidi pranipatena, from a spiritual master. Pariprashnena sevaya, with humility and service. And then these self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So, the service is the very important aspect of surrendering to a guru. It's not that I'm just hearing. Otherwise, we could just read the books. We don't have to have a guru, right? Because we're getting the knowledge from the books. Why do we need a guru? Why do we need the devotees? So, what happens is the guru doesn't just give you the knowledge, he gives you service in which to apply that knowledge. He gives you a mission. So the guru is giving you a mission and a place within Lord Chaitanya's mission. And by that mission, by that service and that mission, you are taking shelter of the internal potency. Because this mission of Lord Chaitanya is not of the material world, it's spiritual by nature. And so, God doesn't just speak to you in the heart if you're some unqualified fool. We don't have the qualification. Tesham satatam yuktanam. We should constantly engage in devotional service. This is how we actually hear the super soul within our heart. Constant engagement in serving Krishna with love. Bhajatam priti purvakam. Constant bhajan with love to Krishna. If we can do that, then He'll give us the understanding by which we can come to Him. The super soul will speak to us. But until we are able to do that, constant engagement, we have to hear from the scripture, we have to hear from the spiritual master, we have to hear from these other sources. So the Guru, he's giving us a mission by which we can learn to constantly absorb ourselves in. This is the beauty. You see that Srila Prabhupada, he gave us so many services. Prabhupada was asked, actually, book distribution, is the most important service, right? But he said it's more for my disciples than those who are doing the books. Because they have this ability to be engaged in service. And so we have the deities, we have preaching, we have so many different services that Srila Prabhupada gave us and is engaging us in. And by those services and by hearing from our spiritual masters and our guides how to engage in those services and by becoming enthusiastic and engaging in those services, then we begin to clear all that is covering our hearts so that we can actually develop the intelligence by which we can come to Krishna. So the practical process of absorption is to take up the mission of your spiritual master, or to find a place in the mission of your spiritual master, place in Srila Prabhupada's mission, and take responsibility. Responsibility means your ability to respond. So when we take responsibility in Prabhupada's mission, that's a higher thing. Like if we're chanting our rounds, that's very nice. We're chanting rounds, we're following regular principles, we're getting mercy, no doubt. But when we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're asking, my dear Radha, my dear Krishna, please engage me in your service. Please don't engage me in the service of Maya. So when opportunities for service arise, when opportunities to become leaders or to take responsibility over something in Krishna's service arise, this is Krishna's great blessing upon us. Because if we take that service up with enthusiasm, we have an opportunity to become absorbed. And by that absorption, we can transcend lust, anger, greed, envy, and illusion. We can actually transcend. And it's practical, and it's palpable. One can actually see it, that if we just start engaging in Krishna consciousness, we become very happy. Krishna, Sutta Goswami says, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jnana Yashi Vairagyam Gyanam Bhakti Yoga Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. By Bhakti Yoga unto Bhagavan Vasudeva, Krishna. Jnana Yashi Vairagyam, Jnana means birth. Jnana Yashi Vairagyam, immediately one develops Vairagya. Jnana, Vairagya, a detachment, and Jnana, knowledge. Ahaitikam means it's immediate. So from that service to Vasudeva, one develops immediate knowledge and detachment. So that means we have to practice sadhana bhakti very seriously. The sadhana bhakti is a very beautiful and powerful process. And you actually, if you do it correctly, you become Shubhada, you become blessed at every step. That's what Rupa Goswami says. There's three stages of bhakti yoga. There's sadhana bhakti, there's bhava bhakti, and there's prema bhakti. Well, there's 9 stages of bhakti yoga, but he also explains that there's 3 stages at different places in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sutta. So in the stage of sadhana bhakti, 2 symptoms of pure devotional service arise if you perform it properly. One of those is kleshagni, means that all your miseries are burned away and you become fully joyful. And the other one of those is shubhada, you become blessed at every step, everything becomes auspicious. So we just have to perform sadhana bhakti in a pure way. It is still bhakti. Some people say sadhana bhakti is not the real thing, but actually that's not what Rupa Goswami says. It's still bhakti, because there's still these symptoms. And it still has to be done with the same conception of bhakti. Adhyamilashita shrinyam gyanam karmanyanavitam anukulena krishnanam shrilam bhakti ritama. So bhakti yoga is performed without any desire for a result, any fruitive activity, or without any mental speculation. Specifically, Prabhupada translates the idea of oneness or monism. It's got to be free of those misconceptions and these fruitive activities. It should be performed in a favorable mood and in a way that's pleasing to the Lord, while following the footsteps of the previous acharyas. That's pure devotional service, as defined by Rupa Goswami. So even a brand new bhakta can do that. First day at the temple. You see sometimes actually that someone's really admire, and then they come and they start chanting Hare Krishna with a lot of enthusiasm, and they start engaging in Krishna consciousness. And it's just like overnight, they're like effulgent devotees. They don't have all the knowledge, but they're like, they're feeling the bliss just like everybody else is. Because they're not reserved. Their egos aren't in the way, they're just so sincere. Krishna reciprocates with that sincerity in the heart. And so, when we get something to do in Krishna consciousness, we always have that opportunity to be absorbed. But it starts off with our chanting. And we should be absorbed in our japa, rather than just chanting japa like not good japa. So, night and day, at least my experience, that I like to chant my rounds generally before Mangal Artik. I like to chant at least 12 rounds before Mangal Artik. And then I usually do 4 after. But if you have that good japa where you're absorbed and hearing the holy name, it's like you get like a superpower. Life just becomes easy. No matter what's thrown at you, it becomes easy because you have this time with Krishna. That if you're trying to chant without absorption, absorbed in other things, distracted chanting, then that chanting won't give you any benefit. It'll still give you some benefit, but not the same, not even close to the level of benefit that you get from having absorption in your chanting. So I like to do my chanting, and then I usually come to Mangalarti, or I'm on the altar, and then I do my puja, and then I come to class, and so in that way from like 2 in the morning to 9 o'clock is just trying to be fully absorbed, no distractions. Sometimes I try to do the challenge where I don't see if I can avoid talking to anybody until breakfast. Especially if I'm on the altar, like this morning, on the altar, and then you find that, I find myself that I haven't spoken to anybody, I haven't said a word, but I feel so happy because I've been talking to Krishna this whole time. I've been either chanting or worshiping the deities. So yeah, we can become absorbed. And absorption is, of course, easier when we have attachment to something. I mean, Krishna says, just fix your mind upon me, the personality of Godhead. And if you can't do that, follow the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga and develop a desire to attain me. So most of us are there. Most of us are on the level of just fixing our mind on Krishna. So therefore, we're following rules and regulations to develop a desire to attain Krishna. Now, bhakti is an emotional process. We're not sentimental. We avoid being sentimental. But we also want to be sentimental for Krishna. So bhakti is an emotional process. It's a process of developing emotions for Krishna and developing attachment to Krishna. So that process of sadhana bhakti, chanting and worshiping the deity, all these things are meant to transfer those emotions which would normally be used towards lust and transforming them into love for God. So when we engage in such a way by following regulations, we begin to control the mind, because the mind always is absorbed in wanting what it wants. Most people's mind is absorbed in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That's the female is mostly absorbed in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The male is mostly absorbed in mating, sleeping, eating, and defending. Both ways are absorbed. But they're always absorbed in these four activities, materialists. Even if it appears they're not, it's actually they're just doing so many sophisticated ways to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Some people become very absorbed in their jobs, which is just a way of defense and to increase their mating propensity. And it's all absorption of that. But the devotee, he's taking those same propensities, which are attachments, and he's doing a process by which he's changing his mind and becoming attached to Krishna. And when we become attached to Krishna, it becomes very easy to control the senses. So first we tie down the senses on the outside. We tie down them by controlling the senses. We follow four regulative principles. Because the mind is kind of in the middle here between the senses and the soul. And so on one side we tie down the senses, but if we just tie down the senses, then the mind it's too restless still, it'll always break out. But we have to tie it down on the other side by intelligence. That means we're chanting and hearing and chanting constantly. If we do those two things, the mind is tied down on both sides. And so the mind becomes peaceful. And the mind begins to also become attached to Krishna. I was talking with Gauranga Prabhu once, and he was saying, how you have to be obsessed with the Mahamantra the way that you were obsessed with some woman. I don't know, he told me, he says, if a man really loves a woman, that's all he thinks, you just wake up thinking about her, you go to bed thinking about her, you just think about her all day. This is the way a man is. Like in a test. So then when he said that, when you become that way with the Mahamantra, then that's the real thing. You're obsessed with Krishna. This is possible by taking up the mission of the Guru. Most importantly, when we take personal responsibility for our spiritual life and we make this our life and a project. When we do that, then we become very happy. It becomes very easy to control the senses. So Prince Maharaj is hearing from Sanat Kumar, who was fully Krishna conscious, and therefore he was able to understand. So the more we hear, the more we're able to understand. This is the principle of Bhakti. The main principle is to hear. We can become absorbed in hearing. It's very, very easy to become absorbed in hearing. It's the most easy of the processes to become absorbed in. And then it becomes easier to absorb in chanting. So the first thing is hearing. How do you become absorbed in hearing? You can, especially it's easier now than it was in the past, because we have phones. All we have to do is put on the Chaitanya Bhagavat, listen to Chaitanya Charitamrita. You can listen to these pastimes. You listen to the Krishna book. Parameshwar Prabhu listens to the Krishna book 24 hours a day. If he's not distributing books or chanting his rounds, he's listening to the Krishna book or reading another book. He even sleeps with the Krishna book going, constantly hearing the Krishna book. And he's so blissed out about it. He loves it. I mean, it's not like I'm tired of it. He loves the Krishna book more than any other person I've ever seen. It's full absorption and distributing in Prabhupada's books, distributing them, hearing them. So we can always hear. And if you hear these pastimes of the Lord, they're so nectar. That's a very famous verse. Tadvaj Vishago Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlo Kamabara Bhushikya. It's one of the Bhakti Bhagavad verses I'm trying to remember it. Namandantasyasya Samkidani Yachrinati Gayati Srimati Sadhava. That's coming right after the verse that Gurudev did a class on just a few weeks ago at March Oasis. The Tadvayasam Tirtham verse, that these material literatures, they're like places of pilgrimage for the crows. Tadvayasam Tirtham means the place of pilgrim, Tirtha of the crows. Navajas Chitram Paramharu Yasho Jagat Pavitam Bhagavita Karichat. That those who don't hear the pastimes of the personality of Godhead, which purify Jagat Pavitam, they're Jagat Pavitam, they purify the entire universe. People who are attracted to mundane literatures, Tadvayas and Tirtham, they're like places of pilgrimage for the crows. But the Yatra Hamsa Nirmanyushikshaya, the Hamsas, the swan-like people, do not delight in such literatures. Rather, they absorb themselves on these literatures of the personality of Godhead, which are of a different creation. Tadvaj Vishago Taga Viplava. Vishago means creation, right? Because even though they're imperfectly composed, purified men hear them, because they're directed about bringing a revolution in the impious lives of a misdirected civilization. Though imperfectly composed, purified men who are thoroughly honest absorb themselves in them. So we can absorb ourselves in the crow literatures, or we can absorb ourselves in the swan literatures. It's very easy though. Actually, we have these phones, and it's amazing how much hearing I can do. I'm always, everything I'm doing is accompanied by listening to Srila Prabhupada's books, or listening to Krishna's pastimes, or classes. You can always hear. It's so easy. And then when you get a chant your rounds, it becomes like you get supercharged japa from that hearing. But then it's like if you hear one thing that's, under my experience, is if I just get into one mundane thing, which happens a lot. Be like hearing, and then check my messages or my Facebook, and it's some mundane thing. It's like the scratch in the record. Your consciousness falls right back into misery in seconds. So of course we want to be ahaitu kapatiyata, the opposite proceeding. Ahaitu, unmotivated, uninterrupted. If we can hear it that way, then we become very successful. So this is the process of being absorbed. Rather than being grihamani, being absorbed in all kinds of mundane material activities. Some people, like, of course not grihasta. Grihasta is not the same thing, but sometimes you meet people who try to write a spiritual life, but they don't talk about anything to do with Krishna ever. They're only just talking about their family. That's all they talk about. And the child, and just the problems. They don't even appreciate it. constantly, oh, they're this, they're this, they're this, they're so this, even to the point where they don't even, they'll just come up to you and start telling you, about their family problems. Because they're fully absorbed in it. Not that we, of course, we all have challenges, and we should be responsible in whatever, whether we're brahmachari or grihastha, we have to be responsible. But we have to not be absorbed like that. It's the Grihamaiti consciousness. Absorbed in how to enjoy, how to get what I want out of a situation. Grihastha's thinking, how do I serve? What is it? He says the word here, Atma Megha. He's absorbed in the Atma. He's absorbed in the self. In other words, he's always thinking, how am I going to serve Krishna? He's making plans how to serve Krishna. He's doing things in such a way that when he wakes up, he's just thinking, how am I going to get everything I got to do done for Krishna today? Rather than thinking, the cheater consciousness is, how am I going to get done what I have to do for Krishna and then do what I want to do? That's the cheater consciousness. And Krishna's mercy, if you get enough service that, you get your service done, then whether you have time to do it, just let me read for a few minutes. It's how I feel, it's like if I have any free time, it's like, I can read. Otherwise, it's just, or I can rest. So, that's about all I have to say. Is there any comments or questions? Chandrika, what would you say today?
So, there is no boredom, in Krishna consciousness, because we're always engaged, like saying 24 hours a day. So, does that mean that we're living a transcendental spiritual experience all the time? So therefore, there's no stress involved with that, because it's, even if it's something practical, people think that, meditation is, all spiritual, you can't do anything practical, but you can do practical things, cleaning and pots and different things, and still be absorbed in that transcendental.
I should be asking you that question. You're the example of someone who's transcendental in all circumstances and never disturbed. You're the real, one of the most Sama people I know. And so, yeah, of course, it's always a meditation. And I experienced that too, that whatever we're doing is meditation on Krishna, and we're transcendental because it's service. Sometimes when you're really in the zone, if you get that real zone, like chant japa, and sometimes you chant japa, you're like, this is divine communion with God. This is so powerful. And then I go into the altar and I'm doing the artik, and I had this realization. I was doing the artik, and it just hit me like, this is like such an opened, and like it's the state of being is so blissful. It's like I didn't even register to me because I was just absorbed in doing the artik, but sometimes it's like, this is so blissful. And then from there I go, start gathering flowers for my deities. And then that's also, that service is Krishna himself. And so if we're constantly in contact with that, then we're always transcendental. The real problem is, for most people, is matsarya, it's envy. Which, we say envy, but actually that word matsarya specifically means it means envy, but it means more specifically like things aren't going the way I want them to go, and therefore I'm upset. And so when you have that desire to make things a certain way, it becomes very difficult to become absorbed. You kind of come out of that state. But if you're surrendered, and if you've developed the grace to understand, like the famous Catholic prayer, like, dear God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. If we develop that consciousness, then it becomes very, we can even if it's a challenge because we're thinking this is for Krishna, we're still transcendental, but sometimes we get, materialistic even about our service, and we become attached to the fruits, and it becomes very difficult. Especially, that's specifically, if we become attached to the fruits of our service, it's very hard to remain transcendental. So, thank you. But you're the good example, you should teach us,
Yeah, the whole
sometimes like when you join Christian consciousness in the beginning, you know, like you're all blissed out, it's very easy to go with the flow. But sometimes it's like frustration can even sneak up in like Christian consciousness, like you want things to go a certain way, or you want to serve in a certain place, or you want the devotees to be a certain way, or you want the prasadam to be a certain way. So that can also have that noticing, even in spiritual life, that like wanting things to be our way.
Yeah, for sure. And it's easy to become kind of contented. Like I was hearing this, I was hearing that Radha Maharaj book and was thinking, like not comparing, but just remembering when I was first, really in my spiritual, like looking to spiritual path, and it seemed like everything was miraculous and not at that level, but just this kind of like, it was like a real open-eyed and open-minded place where, I had this openness, and sometimes even, I think in devotion, I was thinking, now I don't always feel that way, and I think it's because, we get kind of content, with the material side of Krishna consciousness, and we can even get into like the religious, it's just a religion, without the understanding. And so, if we get that way, then it's like, you become petty. The prasadam not good. I was supposed to lead the kirtan today.
I did the Gila first.
Yeah, that's the ultimate sign of, extreme pettiness, Actually, if you get the key lamp last, you're the luckiest one, because then you got all the other devotees in person. So, is it Rama?
Oh, just a quick comment. Thank you for class. And I agree with what you said about Chandrika, because I'm still a student. And so I had a realization, and like I said before, sometimes I miss the obvious, like really bad. But with the four, I think the defending part is such a broad, huge topic of what we defend. And before I'd always think it was just defending, like, defending yourself type thing, but now I start thinking about how much defend the ego, and defend this, and defend the way that you want this done, and not accepting or surrendering.
Yeah, Prabhupada also translates the defending to fearing. And he says that's the hardest of all, that's the most prominent of all the four, is this fearing. And we fear everything, actually, It's crazy when you really begin to analyze how afraid we are, as conditioned souls, The devotees know we don't fear death, but we fear change, we don't want the, we're not Abhaya, like Prabhupada was Abhaya, he's completely fearless, But we have so much things we fear losing who we think we are. And therefore we have to defend our position, defend our ego, defend this, defend that. But it does gradually decrease if we become devotees. Try to become devotees. Kantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srimad Prabhupada ki.
So the whole class is recorded.